Hey guys, I hope you're doing alright. My name's Mark Gallagher, and you probably know me as a musician for the covers and the originals and the collaboration videos that I put out. Today I just kind of want to talk about relative pitch, and depending on how long I talk, this might be a series, it might just be a long video, we'll see. So firstly, I'm a musician and I have relative pitch. I'm going to kind of talk about what it is, what it means, and probably tell a few funny stories, well, funny for me, of my experiences with relative pitch. So what is relative pitch? Well, you've probably heard of the term perfect pitch before. The idea of a guy who can identify chords, keys, identify notes just by hearing them. You've probably seen videos of a guy like Dylan who has this to the fucking extreme, where he's I think he's 9 and he's identifying such really complex chords, not looking at the piano, he's just got insane ears. So when I'm talking to friends who aren't musicians, or friends who are musicians but they don't really understand pitch to that kind of degree, I kind of describe myself as perfect pitch, because it's easier to communicate, it's easier for them to understand. So what is relative pitch exactly? Well, it's complicated. It's complicated because there's a little bit of a myth. The myth being that relative pitch is something that you train yourself to do and that you learn, whereas perfect pitch, also known as absolute pitch, is something that you're just born with and have naturally. And that's a bit of a myth. I'll come back to that later, but why do I consider myself to have relative pitch? I know that my sense of pitch isn't perfect, so I can't consider it to be perfect pitch. Reason being, mostly because of my musical upbringing. I am a pop musician. I grew up listening to Radio 1 and Now CDs. I learned piano in a pop style, just playing major triads stuff. I started learning that at the age of 11, which is a bit of a late age to start learning an instrument. Piano players normally start when they're 8. And I learned in terms of chords and not necessarily in terms of doing scales and doing these finger exercises that were so tedious and unmusical. And because I grew up listening to a lot of mainstream music, that was mostly pop and then sometimes R&B, and then I kind of deviated a bit into country. But largely, those genres of music have really simple harmony. They have diatonic melodies, they've got diatonic harmony as well. By that I mean it's all fitting within the key of the song. It's kind of predictable harmony. It's stuff that you expect it to go to. You think, oh, this leads like it's going to go here, and it does. So I grew up listening to really simple harmony. As a result, my limitation is mostly jazz and other really complex forms of harmony. Don't know the sound of a ninth chord. So what does my sense of pitch mean for me? It means that I can identify notes when hearing it, I can identify chords, I can listen to a song and I can tell you what key that song is in, and more often than not, then I can listen to songs and tell you what chords are being used at a given point. I can play a random note, and that's an E. I know it's an E because I can hear that it's an E without even, bearing to look at what I was playing. I mean, I know you're not really going to believe that, but it was sort of like a party trick I would do, in that someone would play a note on the piano and I would look away and identify the notes. I say a party trick, I was never really invited to parties, so... For example, I can't identify a ninth chord because I don't know the sound of a ninth chord, because I never grew up listening to music that had much of that kind of harmony. Same with the 13th chord. I don't know the sound of it. I never listened to that kind of music. So when you look at a guy like Dylan, for example, and a guy who has perfect pitch, his father is Rick Beato, a fantastic jazz musician and jazz teacher. Dylan grew up listening to all sorts of mad fucking harmony, so he's able to understand this harmony a lot better than someone like myself who grew up listening to pop music. But that's the thing, sort of looking at the myth, an idea of the myth of relative pitch that I mentioned before, something that is learned, can be summed up with my friend Hannah. Back in my high school's orchestra, I played piano, then later saxophone. My friend Hannah was a flautist there, and at the start of each rehearsal, we would tune to a concert A, and A is this. Because every rehearsal, every week, every time, you were hearing an A, and you were being told A, tune to this A, this is an A, this note is A. And because she was taught this for years, she eventually learned, okay, I can identify a note. She can hear a piece of music, or she can hear someone go A, and she can identify that as an A. This is an example of relative pitch as a strictly learned thing. And it's definitely possible to expand upon this. It's definitely possible to teach yourself C. It's definitely possible to teach you that note up the octave, down the octave. It's definitely possible to expand upon this and then do the same with chords and gain relative pitch that way. There are videos of this ilk which say, hey, learn perfect pitch in 10 hours or whatever. It's just like 10 hours of them playing this note and telling you this note F, this note is F, here, and they just keep telling you over and over, and it's definitely possible to learn that way, but I believe that perfect pitch is sort of a spectral thing. I don't think it's necessarily a binary of you either have it or you don't. I think it's sort of, lots of people have it, but they have it to certain extents, and they all have their own limitations, like myself, possibly even Dylan. Somewhere there are people who consider themselves to have perfect pitch, but they say don't just plonk random chords and random cluster of notes on a keyboard and expect them to be able to identify it all. Some parts of that come with theoretical knowledge. People who have perfect pitch might not necessarily know the sound of a 13th flat 5 chord because that's a chord they've never come across and they need to learn the sound of it. So there's still a learned element of perfect pitch. Their perfect pitch. I personally believe that perfect pitch is relative pitch that's just really good. I also believe that the MIT did a study on perfect pitch. They had a group of people who were said to have perfect pitch, and they did a test where they're just identifying notes and, you know, they're playing a note and they're just writing down what they were hearing. But the twist was they were gradually detuning the notes during the course of the thing, and no one picked up on it. Towards the end of the test, it got to sort of like microtonal things, you know, sort of like halfway between an E and an F, that kind of microtonality, and no one really picked up on it. And one of the conclusions that MIT came to was that perfect pitch is just relative pitch that's really good. I consider myself relative pitch because it's not perfect, it has imperfections. But then again, I don't think anyone else has. Like, where is the line drawn at perfection? So for this next part of the video, I'm going to talk about my sense of pitch and how I learned about it and how it developed and how I understood what I had. So with this story, I didn't think of it at the time, but now looking back, it shows some earlier signs. So this was back in year 7 when I was about 11 years old. It was before I learned to play piano, but I still enjoyed singing. And I auditioned for the school play Anything Goes. I'd missed the assembly, which sort of gave you your audition materials and stuff. However, my older brother, he was auditioning for the same play. So when I asked him what we needed to do and prepare for the audition, he sang the title song Anything Goes to me. Now, my older brother isn't the best of singers. I mean, tone deaf might even be a more appropriate adjective. However, he sang the song to me and I memorised the pitch in which he sang it to me about once or twice. I memorised that and I was preparing it as such in his sense of pitch. So when I arrived at the audition, I was quite surprised to notice the song was different to how he was singing it to me. Looking back now, in the audition, it was around the key of B flat. He sang it to me around the key of E flat with loose things in places. But it was just the fact that I listened to him sing it once or twice and I reproduced it at the same key that he did. It's one of those early signs of my sense of pitch and how that reflected in my singing. This next point of discovery came for me in choir. We were singing the song Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen and we were doing it in A key, and then the teacher, my conductor even, said, okay, well, let's do it in a different key. I believe we were doing it in C and then she put it in B flat. And it was just oh, this is a different key. This is what it sounds like when it's in a different key. The idea that the overall pitch is either higher or lower, but the chords and the melody, it still has a relationship with each other. Oh, that's a different key. As a result, I started paying more attention to when songs were in a different key. Oh, this band, when they play live, they're doing it in a different key to the original. I didn't know at the time that it was half a step down, but I knew, oh, this is a different key. That's what a different key sounds like. Same in movies, particularly Disney musicals. You go, oh, in the movie, it's a different key to that of the CD soundtrack counterpart. So I had this awareness in my head, and this was a big important point for me as a musician and with my sense of pitch. It was a big sort of turning point. Another one came when I went to my dad's. On the way to his house, he popped out the car to go and buy Dame bars or beer or whatever, and I wanted to stay in the car because the song Girlfriend by Avril Lavigne was playing, and that song fucking rules. And as I was sat there, I noticed the bass line, da bom bom bom. dum, bum, bum, bum. And I noticed its similarities to Pachelbel's canon in D. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. I noticed the similarities there, so it's like, oh, da, 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 dum. That sounds like, I think I was playing bass at the time as well, so it's like, that sounds like D, because of I know what the sound of a D string is. Dum, A, B, G, D, A, B, G. So later that day when I did go to my dad's house, he had a piano at his place and I played the notes D, A, B, G, and to my shock, it was right. Got a couple more, I think. First one came from piano lessons. I was preparing for my grade 1 exam, and as part of the piano exam, there's a portion where you have to stand behind the piano and do oral activities. Oral, A-U-R-A-L, for those people with really dirty minds. The oral activities are largely just sort of basic singing, just to prove that you can kind of do an arpeggio. In prep for this, my teacher once stood me behind the piano, he played a note, and I said, is that an F? He went, yes, it is. Play another note, I think it was a C sharp, and I identified it as such because I knew that the song Innocence by Avril Lavigne goes dun da 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 dun da 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 dun, that starting on a C sharp. And if you are trying to train your ears to identify notes, that's a good place to start, to sort of associate a note with a given melody or riff. But I identified that, identified another note, and then he played a spread chord across a few octaves, identified that as such. I think that was a B flat, that he just played across like 2-3 octaves, and I was like, very good. Very good ears. So that part was a really nice ego boost, which I sort of tried to develop further with testing it out with my friends. But the really big one came in about year 9. I was 14 and I went to an open mic night with some friends at the Shakespeare in Nantwich. It's now called Bench Bar. And at this open mic night, there was a female singer who was singing a cappella. And I told my friend, I know this sounds mental, but she's singing in A major. And he just looked at me like, but I could just sort of tell. As I was listening to the song, I was audializing. By audialize, I mean visualize, but with hearing. I was audializing the chords underneath in my head. And I was thinking, okay, if I was to end this song on a tonic finish, if I wanted this song to, on a nice finish of the root of the song, what chord would I do? And I imagined the chord A. That works with the key, what she's singing in. She must be singing in A. This was a big light bulb moment for me. I realised that I could start identifying keys. I listened to the song Mistletoe by Justin Bieber, and I knew that I can play this song. This is the first time I've heard it, but I can hear it's just A, E, F sharp minor, D, 1, 5, 6, 4, and A. I know it's just this. I can, yeah. As for putting a label on it and calling it perfect pitch and then later relative pitch, I just describe myself as I've got really good ears. I don't know how I came across it, but at some point I will have read what perfect pitch meant and went, oh, I can do that, and then later learn about relative pitch, which was under the relative pitch is something you learn thing. And then later, as I kind of understood my limitations more and understood, yeah, I can't do some of these chords. And that's why I got more comfortable calling myself someone with relative pitch as opposed to perfect, even though I feel like I've already explained myself before on that. If you have any questions about relative pitch or perfect pitch, just leave a comment below. I'm very happy to sort of answer questions on this relatively new and not really touched upon topic. Thank you to my supporters on Patreon for their generosity during these trying times, but especially thank you to Ad Van Bever, Brad Indicott, Charlotte Pelgan, Dagmar Richter, Frank Purple, Giorgio Gapardo, Jonathan Piercy, Catherine Perrin, Nicole Ringer, and Tib Magnuson. Gosh, there are so many names. But thank you so much. If you want to see more videos like this, or my covers, or my collaborations, and things like that, you can firstly like my Facebook page, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Mark Gallagher Music, and you can also head over to patreon.com/Mark Gallagher Music to make your pledge and get access to a bunch of exclusive content. My name's Mark Gallagher, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you stay safe and well. Cheers.